Welcome to the Doctor's Life podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Diane. Think of the podcast as a mobile doctor's lounge where we take some time out and explore topics that doctors are interested in related to what it means to be a doctor in today's world and creating a rich, satisfying, and meaningful life, as well as making the healthcare system better for doctors and patients. So, if you are a doctor, you'll feel right at home, and if you aren't a doctor, you'll get a better understanding of doctors and what we think about and talk about. I know you will enjoy the conversation. Let's jump in. Hey everybody, welcome to the Doctor's Life podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Diane Ansari-Wynn. I'm sure you've gotten to know me well if you've listened to other podcasts. Today, we are going to talk about an amazing platform that was created by James E. Brown Jr. I would love for you all to hear what James has created and what he has to say. Let me tell you a little bit about James. He has had over 30 years of commercial leadership experience working for some of the most innovative companies, including Dow and Kraft and GE, Hewlett Packard, and Royal Dutch Shell. And then a few years ago in 2016, he left his role as VP of Global Marketing Strategy, Brand, Corporate Communications, and Business Development at Superior Energy Services. And now he's created an amazing site, more than a website. It's really a philosophy, a system, an amazing way to create close connections, which in this day and age are just crucial and paramount to us as people and as a society. He's designed this platform to help people encourage the people that they care about in a personal, authentic, and consistent way, which has been personally my experience of James Brown. He definitely walks his talk. He believes that everyone is going through something and that we all need encouragement along the way. Isn't that true, guys? And his new platform is available now. Again, it's EncourageX.com. And with that, let's talk to James. Welcome. Welcome to the Doctor's Life podcast.
Dr. Diane, this is long overdue. So happy to be here. Such a delight.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm going to leave it to you that you are so inspiring and amazing. And I think everyone would love to hear about your journey and how you came to create EncourageX. Obviously, you came from a background of immense expertise, but with a very loving heart. So with that, I'll let you explain your journey.
Sure. Well, I probably should start by talking about the fact that, everyone again is going through something. Sometimes it's things that are celebratory. Sometimes it's significant challenges in our life. But knowing that at least one person truly believes in you on either end of the continuum is super important. And I'll start with the celebratory aspect that can actually be a really lonely place if you feel like people are not also celebrating with you, right? Sometimes the most difficult thing that you can face is success and have people actually trying to pull you down because of your success, right?
That's interesting. I hadn't considered that at all, but you're right. You're absolutely right.
I mean, especially in corporate America, when someone gets promoted, it can be the loneliest feeling to be promoted to the manager of your own department, having to deal with the people that were your peers, and now they are reporting to you. It can be a very lonely experience. And then, of course, the other side of the equation of things that are challenges, and we talk about it from the standpoint of life events, topics, and situations that people may be going through. And for me, it really goes back to when I was about 13 years old, living in the Chicagoland area, and my dad came home one day and said, "We're moving to Springfield, Missouri." This is back in the 1980s when you had no Google search to figure out where Springfield, Missouri was. Actually,
Isn't it the center of the universe?
As far as country music is concerned, it probably would be considered that. But I had no frame of reference. And, the short story is after figuring out that this was in the Ozarks and a place that I'd never visited in my life, my dad said, look, we're going to make this move in 2 months. I'm going to fly down to Springfield and start my new job as the manager for this location for Pennzoil. He said, I'll be back in 2 months. We'll pack up the house. We'll drive down on a Friday and you'll start school on Monday. And this was during my 8th grade year with about 2 months left. So the obvious request from me was, can I at least graduate from my junior high school? His response was, we all move together. And so we'll load up and we'll just work it out. And so sure enough, I arrived in Springfield, Missouri on that Friday evening. And on Monday, I found myself in the academic counselor's office on Monday morning, looking at my new classes and waiting for my student ambassador to take me around for my classes that day. And so when the young man, Doug Pitt, showed up to take me to my classes, the first thing we noticed about one another is that we didn't really look like each other from the standpoint of how we dressed. We didn't sound like each other. It was a complete cultural shock for both of us. I was wearing a necktie, penny loafers, and horn-rimmed glasses, carrying a leather briefcase. And Doug was wearing a 10-gallon hat, cowboy boots, and a gigantic belt buckle. It was complete culture shock.
Yeah.
Just really made me realize that, this is going to be a very different experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll fast forward, through the summer, getting ready to go to the high school. There were several junior high schools that were merging together. And so they didn't have a freshman class election because there's no way for those groups to have been in the same area, meaning, the freshman class. And so that first 2 weeks, they were making the announcements for people to run for officers. And I can remember in my homeroom session, a young blonde-haired, blue-eyed classmate of mine, Tracy George, looks back at me and says, you should run. And I said, run for what? She said, you should run for president. I said, president of what? What are you talking about? She's like, I think you should run for freshman class president. And I'm like, I've only been here for 5 months. I really don't know what you're talking about. And she said, there's something about you I think people would really respond to. So I went home that evening around the dinner table with our family, and they were asking, how'd your day go? And, by 6 o'clock that evening, I was actually considering it. And I told them I was thinking about running for freshman class president. And before I could get out the word president, my mother said, those kids are not going to vote for you. I was like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a shocker to the system. This is from a family that always said you can achieve whatever you want if you put your mind to it, right?
Yes.
But I guess the reality in her mind, her frame of reference, how she saw the world, this was not a possibility and maybe even a safety risk in her mind.
Yes.
That's the way it seemed. My dad said, well, it's up to you, but your mom may be right. You may want to slow your roll a little bit. So I said, I'll think about it. And I went back to school the next morning, and Tracy George is waiting for me outside her homeroom saying to me, so what are you going to do, JB? I said, I'm not sure, Tracy. This doesn't really feel like a natural swing to me. I've never run for office and I'm new here. It just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. And she said, well, what changed from yesterday when you seemed like you were considering it? And I said, well, I went home and talked to my parents, and I gave her a little bit more detail about the conversation. And Tracy's now assistant provost and vice chancellor at Vanderbilt University at the law school. And Tracy said, I think I understand some of the hesitation, but before you make your final decision, I've got 3 things I want to tell you. So
she's in 9th grade and she's already enumerating.
Yeah, she
very organized.
Definitely an old soul, right? She said, number 1, your mother is wrong. Number 2, I'll be your campaign manager. And number 3, you're going to win. And I have to tell you, Diane, it was an amazing feeling to be completely supported, full stop, by another human being.
Yes.
For no other reason besides the fact that they could see potential in you that you didn't even realize was inside of you yet. And so I have to tell you that for me, that's the seed that was really planted in my mind, over 40 years ago now, that we all need at least one person to truly believe in us.
Yeah.
At least one. And the trajectory of my life and my career significantly changed that morning. It only takes one to really get your back and to move forward.
It sounds similar in some ways, not exactly the same mechanism, but from what I hear you saying, it was almost like that seed was planted so that you would be called to do what you do. So I liken it to the physicians, that are in our audience who they can almost uniformly describe a moment or an experience that led them to be called to the work that they do. And so I feel like in some ways that you have had that type of experience where you might not have said like, oh, I'm going to create EncourageX.com, but that profound experience of being seen and acknowledged and encouraged in some ways started you on this journey to where you are today.
I think so. And I'll go one step further to say that that was the first of many experiences of people deciding to put their social capital on the line to make sure that I found the courage that I needed to get on beyond the now, is what I call it.
Mm-hmm.
The now of what I currently see in front of my face. Part of the encouragement process is to really be the bridge between where you are today and where you could be.
Yeah.
Encouragement provides you with the possibility.
So from your experiences, you came to create EncourageX. Can you explain what EncourageX is and how people can use it?
So I think most of us have experienced a moment when a friend, a family member, or a colleague has shared information with us about something that's going on in their life. And it's usually one or two options. Usually, one, we have a really good sense of what that life event, situation, or topic is all about because we've actually gone through it. Or option B, we have no idea what the real experience of going through that happens to be because we don't have any insight either with someone we know or ourselves going through it. And in either situation, EncourageX provides you with the ability to basically do three things. The first step is to create a profile for that individual so that you can put in the type of relationship you have with them, the life event that they're going through, and then also the details about that person's history, as much as you personally know. So this is not a social media scrape. This is just things that you personally know about them. That goes into the algorithm within the platform, and it provides you with recommendations in three areas, actually in four areas. The first is words and phrases that you can use to encourage that person. The second is audio and video content. The third is gifts and goodwill. And the fourth is events and experiences, including questions that you can ask that person to really engage in a meaningful conversation. And even before you get to the recommendations, every life event has a 2 to 5 minute article that clarifies what that person might be thinking about that's going through the situation, things that might be encouraging to say or do. And then sometimes, most importantly, what are things that might be discouraging to say? And I find, these articles to be a 2-minute read and to really get you in good position to be your best self, to be the best version of yourself for that person. There's so many times when we will say things that we regret because it's kind of ready, shoot, aim. It could be really damaging to a relationship. And EncourageX helps you to get those recommendations. You're then able to schedule things to do over days, weeks, and months to make sure that, again, the consistency part, that you don't forget to encourage that person as they're going through whatever they're going through. We've identified over 1,800 life events that folks may go through from the time they come into the world to the time that they leave. And the latest version of EncourageX now allows communities, thought leaders to create their own collections versus it all coming from EncourageX, right? And so we now have 48 new curators that have just signed up in the last 8 weeks to bring their own collections to EncourageX. They're able to essentially sell subscriptions to their collection. It's usually somewhere between $3 to $9 a month. And in most cases, a portion of that monthly subscription is being donated to charities that are related to the topic that they're focused on. But it allows people with communities to use their expertise on topics to help others get enough insight to be there for that person in a way that goes beyond kind of the perfunctory comments of my thoughts and prayers are with you, or I'm so sorry to hear that, and then you got nothing.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you've summed that up so well. I mean, our intentions are good, right? We want to say the right thing. We want to do the right thing. We want to reach out in a way that is supportive and impactful. But a lot of times we just don't know how. So I love how you brought that to individuals. In addition to having individuals be able to access your platform, you've been working with large corporations as well as healthcare organizations that can work with you to use your platform. How do organizations or corporations work with EncourageX as well?
It's a great question. And I'll frame it this way, that there are really three primary segments we focus, two of which we have actively launched. We started with what we call My Company, which is really focused on corporations. And in that situation, it's more of what we call a white label experience, in that companies will ask us to bring the experts based upon their list of topics. All that is custom curated based upon their population of employees, and in some cases, their customers. I can't reveal the name of the top 10 medical school that we just signed a contract with to start developing their collection. But I will tell you that there are a lot of common thematics in what they're trying to develop with physician professionalism, physician health and wellness, and the ability to help physicians understand the process from going through residency all the way through retirement, and all the things that need to be considered to make sure that they're actually able to realize what they had envisioned for themselves when they had that moment, as you described, when they decided they want to become a physician. Because I know that some of the content I've read of your own publication, the whole idea of physician burnout, I think, is very much related to sometimes losing perspective on taking care of oneself, taking care of patients, and understanding kind of where the real journey line needs to be as they're going through the day-to-day.
Well, I'm excited about the work that you're going to be doing with the medical school. I'm so curious, and I love to ask the questions that I think the doctors in the audience would be curious about asking. Can you tell more about what you're helping to develop and how
Sure.
your company is creating the interface, that connection? There's a lot of
Absolutely.
physician leaders in the audience, and part of what I get asked, the underlying question when I get asked to train physicians and organizations as coaches, is they're looking to create more encouragement, just as you said, support and advice to some degree, but mostly, as you were mentioning, seeing the individual, meeting them where they're at and helping them to reach their goals.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll provide as much as I can at this point. They essentially just secured a grant to get support to actually curate their own content, but use our platform as a vehicle to complement the additional in between their face-to-face discussions with physicians about things they may be going through, to have again, very personal, authentic, and consistent encouragement. I mean, COVID-19 has really spiked that experience in ways that no one could have ever really predicted realistically.
Absolutely.
But it is amazing at how fast this institution is mobilized to create over 150 life events now, not just related to COVID-19, but to leadership, physician health and wellness, and then also physician professionalism, to make sure that there is a vehicle, instead of sending mass emails to people to communicate the well-being and trying to make sure that everyone has the right PPE and all these other issues, to actually have it in a one-to-one experience. Now, ironically enough, to me, it's really no different than when you get a chance to go and see your doctor one-on-one. If they actually take time and spend time with you to understand your history, you walk out feeling like someone's really got my back, right? Mm-hmm. My physician really understands what's going on with me versus just treating me as one of many that may have similar symptoms, but they're not actually trying to understand the details about me. The encouragement process is very similar with what they're going to be creating, that they can actually include specific demographic information about the physician to make sure that the recommendations that are popping up to encourage them are more specific to their likes, dislikes, preferences. The second market segment, which we just released 3 weeks ago, is called My Community, which includes, ironically enough, physicians, schools, charities, thought leaders, even podcasters that have what we call a community of people where they're trying to provide their expertise to their community. And in many cases, trying to help their community encourage one another. So people get subscriptions and they're using it for folks that are part of, I'll say in some cases, a very large cohort, but also with their friends and family and colleagues. So a very viral related community there. And then the third section, which will be launching here in the next few weeks, things have accelerated a lot because of the COVID-19, is what we call My Family. And My Family is focused on you creating your own encouragement collection, almost like an heirloom legacy experience of all the things within your own family that may be very specific to a smaller group of people that's very private, to help people understand the history and where they've come from and where they're headed and all the resources that are within their own family to help encourage each other in a very, very personal way. Things that may not be shared outside of the family, but have one place and a very secure vault-like experience to access.
I love that. And as you were describing it, I really lit up because I know that that is definitely happening. Families in particular, they're reaching out to each other. Certainly in my family, we're reaching out to each other. We're reconsidering our relationships. You know, we had a family reunion scheduled and that's being canceled. But in the emails that we received, they put in photos of old family reunions. And I just recently received photos of my grandmother and her sisters, you know, so I feel that that's really starting to come together. And in other platforms, such as Facebook, there's concerns about it being secure, about it being long lasting, about it being hacked. So while it's really popular, it's certainly in my opinion, and not only my opinion, that it's just not the most long-lasting and secure place to be putting that kind of information and communication. So I love that you've created the My Family piece of EncourageX, and you're describing it as being a secure place. The legacy of a family can be stored safely and accessed and treasured as it should be.
Exactly. And if I may address two of your points, I have a Facebook account, I have a LinkedIn account, and I call those to be pure social media plays. It's all about one-to-many kind of communication. I would actually not describe EncourageX as a social media platform. It's a personal relationship platform that allows you to build stronger personal relationships. And so I don't have a lot of criticism for Facebook. It does what it does, and people use it in ways that sometimes goes outside the lines of maybe what was truly intended. This platform is to really grab onto the baton to pass when you actually find and see people doing things on LinkedIn and Facebook, but then you actually want to say and do things that are actually helping you to build a personal relationship. There's really no platform to really help you with that. EncourageX, we believe, really fills that gap.
It does. It really fills a much needed gap.
Just to add on to what you said about legacy is kind of my second point. I think it's fascinating that, you know, even in my own family, there are these family secrets. That's what I'm going to call them in a very politically correct way. There are family secrets about mental health, family secrets about physical ailments, secrets about people that have been ostracized from the family because they happen to be gay. All these things that may or may not be appropriate for discussion outside of a smaller cohort. EncourageX allows a 15-year-old that may be out of the closet to maybe find some information on their family, very private collection of encouragement about, you know, in 1930, Uncle David came out of the closet and what he went through to make them feel like, you know what, I actually have a frame of reference that's really close to me. And from a, you know, mental health perspective and physician perspective, I think it's really critical to have a place to place some of this information that is private that can be accessed in a way that, let's say that it's even current day, and you have someone that's going through breast cancer, to find out who else in my family had breast cancer or has breast cancer, to know who to reach out to. Because sometimes people are going through things, and I've experienced this in my own family, that it becomes this eureka moment when people find out, hey, I had no idea that my cousin actually went through the same thing through 5 years ago, and there was some information about our DNA that could have really been helpful. Well, EncourageX, my family, allows you to create these different categories related to how to encourage people that are super personal. 1 degree of separation.
Yeah, 1 degree of separation.
1 degree of separation.
Yeah, one to one. It might be one to many, but it's one to inner circle many as opposed to,
and I just don't know. I don't know where you would be able to store this information today. It just doesn't really exist.
Yeah, it's unique. It is truly unique.
Yeah.
So EncourageX is an amazing platform. And I'm sure by now folks are wondering how they can access it. So if you don't mind sharing, how can we take part? How can we get started using EncourageX.com?
Sure. Well, the first basic way to get involved is to sign up for a free subscription. And I will share it this way, that the initial sign up to get an account on EncourageX doesn't cost you anything. And we have curated over 600 life events that are available and accessible for anyone that signs up free of charge. The second way, which is what I am most excited about, are the collections that are being curated by what I call the My Community segment. This is the physicians, the schools, the thought leaders on different topics, where they go level 2, 3, 4, and 5 in depth on certain topics. So we may have a topic that focuses on marriage as a topic, or being pregnant, but the curators that have their own subscriptions will go into more detail on those topics in the way that gets into a much more granular explanation of these topics. So instead of it just being pregnancy, it might be a topic on in vitro considerations for someone who has diabetes. So really getting into the specifics of a life event that is much more specific to that issue. For marriage, you may have topics from a curator that goes into divorce proofing your marriage. It may go into details of overcoming the transgressions or someone cheating on their wife. It gets into much more granularity as to how do you encourage someone that's going through those life events. And for me, that's the real sugar, if you will, as far as trying to encourage, because it allows you to get much more granular about the details. And again, those are the subscriptions that, will cost anywhere from, $3 to $9 a month. And you can sign up for multiple subscriptions. And I'm saying this, Diane, not from the standpoint of just the monetary side of it. It's just the depth of the content. I'm going to talk about Facebook again here for a moment. We don't sell data. We do not sell user data to anyone. We don't have APIs that allow people to plug into our platform and get data about the users.
Right.
And because of that, because we're not selling your data, we actually need to charge a little bit to make sure that we can provide a high quality service. That's the difference, right? So Facebook may be free, but you're actually paying a cost for that service. And as long as you don't put things that are personal, you're conceptually going to be okay. Well, we have a very different model, right? Everything is very private as to how you're encouraging people. And with those subscriptions that you subscribe to, you get great insights and recommendations on how to encourage someone on lots of different topics. So you go to EncourageX.com, get an account, and then you're able to use the 600 free topics, but then you're also able to subscribe to different collections for a monthly fee. You can also do gift certificates now as of last week. So if you know someone that's going through something like motherhood and you want to gift them a year or 12 months of access to the collection, even a husband that may be going through
right? Yeah. It's
a wife that's being a mother for the first time, how do you actually encourage her as she's going through it, or a sister? It doesn't matter. But it provides you with tools to help that person to do a better job encouraging. And I'll say it this way, I'm going to make a bold statement that we believe we're going to have a significant impact for those people that subscribe on reducing divorce rate, on decreasing the fracturing of relationships for school students and their parents during that time period, because we're going to help people find ways to communicate that are meaningful, productive, authentic, that without people having this resource, they may resort to what they see on TV and accept mediocrity in their relationships. With a little bit of effort and a little bit of help, this is not like going to church. This is not like going to see a therapist. This is kind of in between. You get some insights, sometimes from therapists, but it allows you to do some self-service tooling, how you actually are trying to build stronger personal relationships.
Yeah.
I always love to talk about the fact that you have a religious community that has a pastor, a priest, an imam that are trained, right, on how to actually engage and provide support. You have psychologists where they're great at doing therapy and counseling. But the group that you probably deal with the most are your friends, your family, and your colleagues.
Right.
And we are the least trained.
Yeah. I would add too that we're probably the most impactful.
Yeah, we can be.
And it can be in a positive or negative way, as you mentioned in the beginning of our discussion. So most people that are reaching out in that way are searching for something to do, searching for something to say, are obviously looking for something. Well, I'll say obviously because that's my stance, but you're looking for something positive to say. One would hope that you're not searching to look around for something negative to say or do. So what a wonderful platform that you've created. I also love that it is very mission driven from personal experience. And I think that resonates with our physicians, their experience of coming to medicine, again, where usually we've had some significant personal experience. You know, I used to be on the admissions committee for a medical school. And, I know that the experience of myself and my friends as well. And usually you can pinpoint something significant that's happened in your life that directed you to this greater mission, wanting to serve humanity in a unique way. And I know you well enough to know that is certainly your journey, that it's your mission and vision to create this platform. And it's so needed, especially in this time of COVID-19 and separation, isolation. And I think also people looking to get back to basics. And the basics between human beings is connection. Connection.
It is connection for sure. And I define connection a little bit differently than Facebook does. Like I'm connected with someone on Facebook. I'm not sure what that really means sometimes. For EncourageX and our mission, ultimately, I think this is going to really resonate with you and your listeners that even from a medical perspective, the best time to start encouraging someone is before they need it. The best way to help with your health and wellness is to start exercising and eating well before you realize you have an issue. It's very similar that if a child comes out of the womb, there are very few parents that are thinking they want to be a mediocre mom or dad. Like everyone knows my job, depending upon how funny you want to be about what the mission is. A lot of comedians have talked about making sure that their daughter doesn't become a stripper, right? That's like the lowest common denominator, right?
Right.
Sure that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying let's raise that up. Say, my job as a dad is to position her as well as possible to be amazing, right?
Right.
And if I can start encouraging her now, especially right now with COVID-19, we were having a conversation with Sarah and we said, hey, look, we want to set up some FaceTime sessions with your classmates and some of your relatives. And she actually said, well, I don't want to feel like, I'm needy because my parents are trying to set up these calls, with me and these folks. She's 10 years old, but already kind of being domesticated as to she doesn't want to be viewed as needy.
Right.
And I said to her, Sarah, I appreciate your point of view, but let me drop something on you and see how you respond to it. I said, you don't have a car right now. You're only 10.
She's only 10.
Even if you were able to drive, you really can't right now because we're all kind of on this lockdown, shutdown, whatever you want to call it. And we are consciously trying to make sure that with the isolation that's happening right now, you don't have a brother, you don't have a sister. It's just mom and dad, and we're working. You're doing your schoolwork. If we're not available at that moment, there are times when we're a little concerned that you may feel that isolation. We're trying to be proactive to make sure that we are encouraging your engagement. And for us, that's our job, is to be looking out for you before it becomes an issue. Because if we don't do anything and wait for you to start complaining about feeling the isolation, then you've gone below the hard deck. I'm using a Top Gun reference here. You go below the hard deck and it's kind of too late.
Right.
You're in a danger zone at that point. Let's not have you go too low. Let's help encourage you to make sure that you never have to go below a point where it really becomes an issue. And people don't think about it, I think, as proactively as they need to. Marriages would be stronger if people didn't wait until there's an issue. Let's make sure that we're actually trying to actively support. And I have to tell you, my wife is in healthcare. She runs a big hospital system here in Houston, Texas, or a big part of a system here in Houston, Texas. And there's some times when I come in and just say, I'm checking on you. You know, most times she's appreciative of that extra effort. Sometimes it falls on deaf ears. But at the end of the day, she recognizes, look, I'm just trying to make sure that I help to provide perspective on what we're really up against. Because if we wait until it becomes an issue, trying to recover, almost like COVID, like if you do the shelter in place early enough, you will bend the curve, right? If you encourage early enough, you will prevent people from having issues that come from letting things go too long. Right.
Beautiful.
Sorry, I don't mean to get on a soapbox here, but
no, it's
very related to medicine to me. It's the mind,
completely
body, and soul.
Completely related. So whether you're on a soapbox or not, you're speaking truth as usual, my brother. Speaking truth. So how can folks find you, find EncourageX, so that they can get started, find out more about it?
Yeah.
Whether they're an organization or an individual.
Yeah. So I would say this, that if you are interested in creating your own collection, please send an email to support@encouragex.com or send it to me personally, james.brown@encouragex.com. We actually do some screening of all curators that come on for the community platform. We have a 8-page pledge that we ask every curator to sign off on. It's very similar to a physician's code of ethics, that they won't do things that are inappropriate, softening, harassment, bullying, those kind of things. And my daughter's had some funny moments. Well, she's asked about certain people that she sees on TV. She goes, Daddy, would you let that person be a curator? I said, well, that might be a tough one. I said, but if everything on their platform was positive, we would let them be a curator. But if they start to get into the bullying and the telling people that they're being mean or nasty and doing things inappropriately, then we're very much like Bumble. You get kind of a one strike policy and you're off. This is like Disneyland on our platform. It's got to be safe. It's got to feel right for every age group, right? Whatever the topic may be. So we're holding a higher standard. We don't let just anybody on to curate. But we're very open at the same time to everybody.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again, James Brown Jr., for coming on the show, for sharing EncourageX.com with us. It's been a wonderful experience, and I'm so excited about what you've created and the impact that I think, and I know that you know, it can have on the world. I'm very proud of what you've created.
Oh, you've been a big part of it. And if I may share one personal story, if that's okay. You know, there was a moment when I was right in the middle of going through a divorce when I was about 28 years old. And I was traveling through Denver and just made a phone call to you to let you know I was passing through and was on a layover. And, you know, we talked about stopping by to say hello, but I said, I'm just going to go ahead and, you know, head back to Chicago. And a couple hours later, I'm sitting against the wall in the terminal. And all of a sudden I look up and there's Diane. I'm thinking, what the heck are you doing here? You know, so I will say that, you know, sometimes when people show up unexpectedly, it solidifies relationships in ways that goes beyond just sending a text or a phone call, right?
Right.
And I still look back to that moment as another I'll call it, you decided that it was important for the relationship to actually physically be there. And that's an experience that turned into a weekend instead of it just being a quick face-to-face meeting where we're able to kind of recollect and help me get through a situation that, I was the first time I was going through a divorce, and hopefully it's the only time I go through a divorce.
Right.
It was overwhelming, right? And it just reminds me of those moments where you really find out who your friends are, especially if they go the extra mile to help you get through it.
Yeah. Well,
You've been part of it, of all this development of those moments, right?
Well, thank you for sharing that experience. And I was honored to be there and honored to have you as a guest on the Doctor's Life podcast. Thank you again for coming and sharing.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So with that, everybody, we'll call it a day for this episode of the Doctor's Life podcast. If you like this episode, please go ahead and subscribe and share it with your friends. And with that, I will say continue to be happy and healthy and safe. And we'll talk to you next time. Take care. Thanks for listening today. If you like what you've heard, be sure to hit subscribe in your podcast app so that you won't miss an episode. You can also read show notes, get links, and contact me by going to drdiane.com. That's www.drdianne.com. And docs, while you're there, take the Physician Vitality Assessment, which will help you more clearly see if you are at risk for burnout.